Hi everyone, Mature Simmer here. So welcome back. As I somewhat expected, I'm months later than I could have been. Like I think I was looking at July is when I could have cut the grass. I think I had planted and done the weeding over there in June. Oh goodness, hold on. Let me just think of something here. I can harvest tomorrow, because if I harvest today, I know what's going to happen. I'm just going to ignore this grass again. So I'm going to stick with what I'm doing. I forgot that it was oats and it like went so fast. So because I think the last two crops I've had have taken like 6 or 8 cycles, growth cycles. So I was not prepared at that point to go. Alright, I should be good. There we go. So I'm going to eyeball this. And it's probably going to be really a bad thing, but we're going to try it anyway. So I'm going to try to avoid cutting what I don't want to cut. So right now I want to start with that, and then once I'm here I want to open this up. Sorry, I'm in the wrong tool. There we go. A little bit of a challenge to what's happening. So I'm pretty straight on. We'll move it up a little bit. Alright, so if I turn that on, now I want to get this set. So we'll do that, and then we'll move along. I may be a little bit further up than I wanted, but that's okay. You know, we'll go around, we'll dance whatever we need to over there, and that will help. But we'll see how everything works its way through. Well, I'll leave it here. Yeah, I'm probably a whole row up, but at this point, since I'm cutting it, like I'll take advantage of it, because it's all grass and it's all good, and it doesn't have to be perfect, but it should be good. Alright, so at this point I want to move over. I'll just do it slowly, and then we'll slowly move back so that we're kind of reasonable. And this should hopefully work out, because with the swathing mower I think it'll be better. So there we go. So probably when I come back it'll be a little bit different there. But again, I'm able to kind of go over to the other set of fields and then come back down. So once I hit the field, I can't do anything. So if I do this and then circle around to come back, I'll get myself lined up wherever that is here. Whoops, hold on. There we go. So that will move a bit, because I'm like, clearly it's not setting up. So if I put that down, and now go, we'll be relatively straight, and we'll be able to get the grass, because I had not adjusted my width is what was going on. And that was obviously causing a bit of a problem. So it's going to be a little disjointed here as I just try to get things going. I'm going to have to cut down and in essence get the one end of my, really the only end of my headland, because on that end I can just kind of go to the field and turn around, and that works for most of it. But I'm going to not necessarily be talking clearly here for a bit, so I'm probably going to have a section heading where I talk about the news of the day that is big for the farm and basically impactful to FSN for me here, and I'll explain where things are at. If you had watched the generational farming video that had come out probably the last weekend in June, I think is about the timing that existed. I talked about the taxes that are being reinstated here in FSN again, which is fine. Taxes are part of our life. I'm just trying to be careful here, so hold on. There's no real reason to kind of lock my... Wait a minute. Obviously, I'm not as careful as I thought, so it... Oh goodness, nothing is working the way I expected. I want this picked up. Oy. So, yeah, I'm trying to be careful, I'm trying to do whatever, and I still failed. And I failed miserably. But, alright, so we're putting the mower down. And then I'm going to cross over here, because I don't need every last bit of grass. I say that as I back up. But again, I'm trying to maximize things. But there we go. Alright. So I need to have a couple pass. I'm going to basically go down and come back up is what I'm going to do. And then that will hopefully put me in a decent spot here to have enough room to turn around on this end without creating the same problem I just did, which is a challenge that then happens when I'm trying to pick things up. Now again, I'll be windrowing and so forth because we're turning out hay here. I'm not just picking up grass and putting it in the silage. That's something that will be on the agenda for next summer, because we're going to need that for sure. Alright, so now we pick this up. We move this over. And we pick this up. That's what I wanted to have happen. Now we turn this around. And go back to the front, put this down. Come back over here. Once I'm crossed into the field, put this down, and now we drive back up the top here. And so once again, I'm hoping this gives me a good enough area that I can effectively turn around and not have any surprises. But what I was saying is with the hay, it's a little bit more forgiving because I can just kind of scoop things up. I'm going to have to ted this. I'm going to have to windrow it, and then I can finally pick it up. As always, I am a little bit limited in time as to what I can do as far as gameplay, so it's going to be a bit of a challenge of how much can I really get done. So I'm going to pick this up, I'm going to pick this up, and then we're going to come back and go onto our rows. But because I'm going this way, I just want to be clear. So you can see we've got quite a bit of room, because I would like to be able to do it without having to do all the pickup stuff, but it may not work out. But we'll try. So, should be better now. So, thanks for those who stuck around to just watch me do that and do that work. So let's get into what the big news is, the big item coming in FSN that is going to have an impact. It's to be determined exactly the impact it's going to have, but I think to be fair and to really make a good decision, I'm going to have to get significantly more detailed in my tracking. And more importantly, what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to track my balance in game exactly from one time period to another. So I may just create kind of a whole separate taxation decision-making spreadsheet based on what is happening and what I'm seeing. So let's say, for example, now $3,424,069 is what I have here. I came onto this server with about 5 million, so I've not made up what I have done or what I came on with. So basically right now this farm has been it's not a losing operation, that's the wrong way to explain it. Obviously I've made money because I was down as low as I think 1.8 million at some point. So I've gotten to the point now where I'm making money, which is a good thing. But the situation is pretty direct in how it's going to impact things, and taxes are coming to generational farming. You know, the assessment will have to be done similarly over there if things work with what I'm able to do. So really the combination that I'm potentially seeing is I'm worried with the way the tax system is coming that because I have this large field, which goes into figuring out what my tax basis is, but this field is effectively not generating any income because it's grass, and I work on it infrequently. It, I think, tips the scales to the point where I may have difficulty paying my tax bill with the money that's coming off the farm. That's my contention of what I'm seeing in the math. So let's give you the details so that you understand. So I have just over $2 million. I think it's literally 2,001,000 something or other. Or maybe it's 2,100,000. No, it's not 2.1 million, so it's not 100,000. I think it's literally $2,001,000 and something is what my land value is. So that is the land that I own. Now we're also looking at buying a couple more things for my yard, which was going to which will increase my land value, and then will also not be land that is going to generate any money because it's just going to have buildings and silos and whatever. So it's not directly income producing. I'm trying to be as blatantly honest with details here so that I'm not going to be accused of painting a false picture of any kind without facts or details. So there is some income value there, otherwise I wouldn't be doing it to some degree. But I'll explain that as I get there, just as there is some income value in this field, but I'm not turning around and taking this grass and making money off of it by selling the grass directly. If that's the easiest way to explain it. I'm not going to go collect this and then take it somewhere and sell it. Mainly because right now on this server there's nowhere to do that. There's no BGA that exists in FSN that was fully open or whatever. The one that was there still had limits. It was removed probably because it shouldn't have been there, and so I don't have a way, for example, to do anything with slurry or whatever. That's why my slurry just sits here and is full. So we have limited options for some of the byproducts from my dairy operation to function. What that then is creating is a situation where in a 12-day server, we're going to be taxed at a rate of 3.5% of our land value to begin with. That's our base calculation. So for the $2 million that I have right now, my tax will be $70,000, and that tax assessment covers 30 real-life calendar days. So it would be 2.5 game years, because each game year is 12 days, So 24 is 2 years, and then we have 6 more days. So we're going to do a half of a year. So in 2 tax assessments, so for $140,000, that would cover 5 years in the game. I've shared in the last few episodes that I am basically making a profit of about $80,000 per year, and that's off the crop field. So over those 2 years, I would be making 160,000. I'm sorry, I would be making 400, right? 400,000 over those 5 years, paying taxes of 160. So right now, all looks well. The challenge that occurs, and I've kind of posted questions out on the Discord channel, and the answers I've gotten have led me to believe that my math is accurate. If it's not, and someone sees this and they want to correct me, please drop something in the comments. I'm all for accuracy, because at the end of the day, that's what's going to determine what happens. So there's then something called, that they're calling total farm value, but there's nothing specifically named that in anything that we're using in FSN. So the best I could determine is there's this total at NAV, which is total net asset value, and that includes things like savings, and any other thing that isn't land that gets computed in there. And so in my case, because of the large amount of savings I've been able to build up, we're talking about, I have $6.5 million as that number. There's a tax multiplier then that is being put into place based on that in this case is going to be a 4x multiplier. So what that means is that $70,000 tax bill every 30 days is actually going to be $280,000 every 30 days. So over those same 2 tax bills, my taxes are going to be $560,000. And now we start to enter upon what I'm seeing as the potential problem. Because even if we took it down to 1 tax bill, like, you can do it, but it's just cleaner math because fractionally I have full numbers. I have full years, so I don't have, well, I hit harvest before this tax bill, but I didn't hit harvest before that tax bill in the half year, for example. This way we have 5 full years, and we have 2 full tax bills spanning those 5 full years. And as I said, at 80,000, I'm making 400. Now I'm making 400, but I'm paying taxes of $560,000. There's a $160,000 issue that I have there in the negative. And at this point, straight with that, I'm like having to pay out of savings if I had nothing else. Now this is where the more detailed tracking, and rather than trying to track things individually, I mean, that may turn into what it is, but I've not been doing certain things in my tracking because, like, I'd have to do them regardless, and so to me they're not costs I could change, and since they're fixed costs, and I was making a profit because I was seeing my overall number on the farm increase, I was like, well, I don't have to worry about it. So repairing my equipment, for example, regardless of what decisions I make of what to do on the farm, repairing the tractor at a certain level of maintenance is repairing the tractor at that level of maintenance. There's nothing that changes because I planted oats versus planting corn. Now, again, being brutally detailed, I get there's a little bit of difference there because work time comes into it. Like this tractor pulling this equipment is going to be getting X amount of work hours on it to do this, to do something. And it would be different if it was using different equipment that moved at a different rate and covered the field at a different time. So for example, doing hay and the amount of maintenance I'm going to have to do hay off this field versus doing grass, where in grass I just cut and then I grab my forage wagon and collect. In hay, I am cutting, I am now going to ted the field, I am then going to windrow the field, then I am going to collect the hay. Okay, so that tractor or tractors on my farm, because in some cases I may use my large quad track, for example, or something, those are going to burn more work hours doing 4 jobs, likely, regardless of the work time differences, because there's just a lot going on there, than I would have if I'm just doing 2 jobs. Alright, got my GPS being no fun here. Alright, what is going on? Alright. I'll see you in a bit. Alright, I am back here. I'm going to need to reset things. Alright, I think that'll work. Luckily, my bigger concern was I going to lose a bunch of work? Thank goodness whatever happened, it didn't. Now, to get back in here, I had to fully reset and do Task Manager to kill off the Giants editor, which is what runs the game, and restart. So it took probably 5 minutes or so forth, so it's not, the end of the world or anything. But obviously I'm at the 0 line here. I can't tell where I was at before because I'm at a different location than I was. So we're starting to talk about, continuing and this is going to be a long discussion. If you followed it in generational farming, it was a long discussion as well. Now, there was a lot of speculation that took place there. I've gotten some answers again. For lack of a better answer, the answer was the rate is what it is. They believe it's calculated correctly. And even though I'm thinking, hey, I'm running my farm, I'm not asking for a tax rate that works for me, only, meeting the minimum play requirement of running something on my farm every 3 years, and I'm only, doing an acre of my field or something, some insane outlier situation, but I'm running a farm, doing a crop on field 24, running dairy cattle and selling that as often as I can and so forth. But I'm seeing this potential problem, and I've been told, well, we get that. We get you may be concerned. You feel it's high. All well and good, but we think this is the right place. And, and they make a valid point, too, that we've been earning unfair profits, per se, or, unreal profits as well. And my argument was certainly not, hey, the tax rate in the real world is this, it shouldn't be 14%, which is what 3x times 4 is, on a farm, because that's not what it is in the real world. That's not what I'm saying. I'm simply saying, mathematically, model it out mathematically in multiple scenarios for things that the folks are doing, and I feel what I'm doing is realistic. Now, what I'm doing, and I understand, like, if I chose to dump the cows and said, I'm not doing that anymore, and I turn both of these fields into crops, it may work great then. But part of my contention is I shouldn't be forced to farm in a way I'd rather not farm, to exist within the universe. And people can make a valid argument that happens in real life. Like, if you come up with a business model, if you run your farm in a way and you decide, hey, I'm going to do pigs, and you're not making enough money on pigs and your farm goes under because you can't cover your expenses, i.e. including your taxes, you should have done something other than pigs. But again, it's a game here. Like, I should be doing what I enjoy doing, and at this point, what I enjoy doing on this farm is that. And I'm just feeling that because the tax isn't on income, it's on this calculation that includes land and savings, that in essence I'm getting penalized for having a lot of savings and having land which includes a giant grass field that is not generating what a crop field could. Because once again, if I did with this grass field what I'm doing in generational farming, which is mow this grass field 3 times, turn it into silage, and sell it, I would have the same result that I have there, where I'm making a lot of profit, because that's how I make a grass field profitable. But the existence of the grass field here is for that building that we're heading toward. It's for the barn, and it's only for the barn. I'm not looking to make money off of the grass field, because I don't want to do that work. I don't want to spend that additional time of mowing this massive field 3 times. That's not how I want to spend my entertainment time. But I may be forced to do something like that. And so therein lies the tension that I'm feeling right now is this the death of my time in FSN? And that will be what we're going to see over the next X amount of episodes in time, because I don't know the answer to that question right now. It's concerning enough to me that if I have a $160,000 shortfall, that it may be. Now, being realistic and looking at a longer picture, which certainly is helpful, because again, I haven't talked it through this way. In generational farming, I was looking at it really a year at a time and saying, hey, I'm making $80,000 and I'm paying a tax of $280,000. I'm $200,000 off. Okay, so we've already shown by looking at 2 tax bills, 5 full years, which is what that would span, I'm really 160,000 short over that, which means I'm really only 80,000 short, and some of that was because I didn't include the additional year that covers that tax bill, so I wasn't being fair in the analysis there. And then we had the half year, which in essence would mean 40,000. So I in essence didn't have 120,000 on the table, which is how we get down to 80,000, because I have another 120,000 in income from those crops that I was not including, which got me to the $200,000 loss, where instead with 120,000 I get down to an 80,000 loss, which again over 2 tax bills is the 160,000 we ended up at. So hopefully that math is easy enough to follow as I explained it there, is how that's working. So I'm just trying to get my thoughts together so that I'm not just babbling. But the other piece that has been a data point that I haven't worked out, that you've heard me kind of wrestling with here, and I've been wrestling with it because it's one of those, like, I don't know, and for me being heavy data driven, like that lack of clarity is driving me a little nuts, frankly. I don't have a firm grasp on when do I get 500,000 liters of milk. Does that take me 2 years? Does it take me 3 years? I'm not entirely sure. Part of the reason I don't have that is I'm still struggling and I'm still fighting the dynamic of time. Just like I was going to get in here and work on this hay over the summer. Well, we're now in fall, and now I've created again another time problem for myself, which is what regularly happens, which is simply to emphasize again why I don't want to add more time to my work here. I can't keep up with the work I have, and I don't have a really big farm here. I have 2 fields, and one of which, again, I'm not planting crop on, but what I had thought I was going to do was I was going to use the summer, which should be downtime, waiting for the oats to grow, to do this work. Instead, now I'm here and I'm having to be like, do I harvest oats today or do I wait for oats tomorrow? My concern with waiting for oats tomorrow is A, am I going to have time for oats tomorrow? And B, is it going to rain tomorrow? And then I can't harvest oats, and now I've lost that entire crop. So you know, there's all that tension going on as well. You know, but that time struggle has caused me to get into a situation where I'm not having the barn at full productivity long enough to do a real time study on it that would make sense. I mean, I suppose I could really break it down to the smallest base and say, over the course of a day, once I'm at the far thing, like, what am I getting produced, and then just extrapolate that out to see how many days it takes to generate 500,000 liters of milk. And that would be a perfectly valid exercise. It's just not one I've done. So just recently, I had a situation where, again, I misjudged. I didn't have my time set correctly. You know, got interested in other things, whether it was PGA or whatever I was doing, and didn't get back in here early enough, and suddenly the cows had consumed half of the full feed. And so in that case, I'm then consuming more feed, which means I'm going through hay, straw, silage, mineral feed faster than I normally would. So I'm incurring more expense because I'm chewing through my raw materials faster than when the barn is full and I basically save $1,000 or 1,000 units an hour of my raw materials that I don't have to spend if I can just keep the barn running at top capacity. And then that also creates the situation where I'm potentially not producing milk at the top rate and so forth. So to get to the 3.4, you know, I sold my last big hunk of milk, and you know, I think it got me $300,000 or $400,000. So the question is, since I'm 160,000 short, if in that 2-year cycle, if it takes me 2 years for the barn to produce $300,000 of milk, well, now I'm suddenly ahead $150,000 over 5 years. And then kind of my problem has gone away a little bit. Because that's the other piece. Like, there's other things that I'm doing, and it's mainly that, to produce some money. I mean, obviously the BGA is doing a little bit, and so forth. And so the simplest way to determine if I have a problem, because I have the added situation now of taxes take place on the server. They don't take place in-game. So I could have an ongoing increasing balance here in-game, but I'm going to have money leaving out of game, and I have to basically make sure that those two are in an appropriate balance where I have more money coming in than I have going out. Because, you know, at some point, if I needed to, I could transfer money out of game into the web, you know, and vice versa if I needed to as well. But I haven't had to do that here because I've been making a profit. And that's the point of management of FSN, is like, we're making tons and tons of money, and without something like taxes in the mix, it just eliminates any kind of a challenge. This just becomes a way to pass time. I can't argue with that. It's a valid point. I mean, you know, part of what is nice about this is, yeah, I come in, I know I have a farm here I can operate, I know I can get stuff done, but it isn't causing any kind of tension in can I keep it afloat or whatever. Once again, though, I've made the choice as a player. If I want that kind of tension, I do that in single player, where I can create this artificial concern, whether I'm doing a survival mode thing or whatever. You know, because you could argue on my VIP series, which is the single player series I have on the channel right now, that I've somewhat eliminated that tension there too. I'm now generating so much money from the sales because I'm at such a high level with the VIPs that I've somewhat, once again, gotten to the point, and I've passed the tipping point on the farm that I'm in any danger of going bankrupt. But once again, because it's a game, I'm not playing Farming Simulator. That's not what brings me joy of Farming Simulator, is living on that bleeding edge of going bankrupt. If it was, I would say I'd be better served in the current instance at the end of June 2023 for FSN to go into the enhanced realism model that they've introduced recently, because that likely would keep me at that tension point longer than any other flavor of FSN that I have available to me does. Because it's the same thing in generational farming. Even though initially there was the tension, like the problems in Farming Simulator aren't that hard to figure out how to flip things around. My concern here on taxes was, do I have a situation where I have to significantly change how this farm runs, which I'm not interested in doing, or am I eventually headed down the path to bankruptcy? Because part of the "come on, it's not that big a problem, you'll be okay" argument on the flip side of it, when I presented it, was, okay, even if you're right and you're paying that amount, you've got 2 years of real life payments before you deplete your savings. That's 60 game years. And it wasn't said, nothing was said beyond that, but I'm guessing the implication then is like, you may not even be playing that long. Well, I've already played double that almost in how long I've been here in FSN. That's not entirely accurate, but I'm over 60 game years in FSN. That is entirely accurate. And so doing that is not something that's a foreign concept to me, but it's kind of being presented as, it gets you 2 real life years. Like, my God, that's a huge amount of time. And it is. But I just don't operate that way. To me, that's a disingenuous argument. It's just kind of a, hey, you got 2 years that you'll be fine. Stop wasting my time talking about this thing and so forth. So, so that's what I've got to see, because, the implication there was, well, even if you are right and you are losing money, like, you can play for 60 game years and you're not going to even start having a problem. And I'm sure part of the implication then is, if I'm really right and that's the situation, then everyone's going to have a problem. They're going to have the entire community up in arms, and within that time frame they will have made adjustments, which I trust they would. So it's a valid argument from that perspective. The flip side of it, however, was, yes, but my motivation to even expend any effort evaporates if I know I'm losing, let's say the more realistic number that I was talking about, instead of 200,000, if I'm losing 80,000 a year, and there's nothing I can do other than something that I'd rather not do, then I start entering into the realm of the other choice, which is, do I step away from FSN and say, you know what, the way they've modeled it now doesn't align with my gameplay, and even though it's supposed to let us do Farming Simulator any way we want and have fun and be a place to enjoy it, they've created a situation where, in the way I play it, that's wrong. It's just flat out an incorrect statement. It isn't a community in that case for people to play Farming Simulator in the way they seem willing to and enjoy it, because that's been one of the kind of points that they always make is, if you're hardcore and you spend dozens of hours a week, or if you're just kind of a passive player and run a really small operation and spend 3 hours a week in the game, like, there's a place for you in FSN. You can operate. And I'm like, well, did I somehow be the extremely unlucky one to stumble upon a setup that isn't unrealistic? I'm not doing anything weird. I'm running a dairy operation as my primary source. I mean, at the end of the day, if we think about it, I'm running a dairy operation. I have the crop field somewhat to generate straw. It's less to sell crop than it is to generate straw for the dairy operation. So everything's built around that. So this is a reasonable setup for a farm, and it's something reasonable to simulate. But yet, within that matrix, what I was worried about is, do I have a situation that isn't sustainable? And it's possible with the milk sales and the cheese sales and stuff like that it'll be okay. So that's what I've got to see, and in the end, that's what I'm looking toward and what I'll be looking at. So obviously we've gotten most of the mowing done, but I think that wraps up the tax discussion. There's really nothing else. It's just I wanted you aware. I wanted you the detail of what my concerns were. Again, I'm feeling a little bit better in that, maybe it's not going to be what I think, and I'm seeing a better path after having talked it through a couple ways. And then I'm being realistic with it in that if I'm right and the milk puts me over the top, then it does fall back on me and my own personal responsibility to just be a diligent steward of my farm. Because yes, if I forget to come in, I don't feed my cows, I don't sell my milk for 10 years, and then I'm losing money, okay, that is on me again. Then the model is fine, I'm just not working the model properly because I'm just letting my farm stagnate. And in that case, in a simulation in real life, if I took that over and I did that in a real farm, I would fail as well. So the model is working in that case, because if I operate in a way that would fail in real life, I should fail here as well. So I understand that, and so I'm hoping that's what it is. And as I'm trying to self-reflect and be honest about maybe where I'm feeling that trepidation, it might simply be, and yes, because it's been so simple. It is putting me back in that tension of, it's not going to be so simple anymore, and I'm going to have to pay more attention to this, and that's a different argument, because what that becomes now is maybe I'm just not as interested in playing this model any longer, period, because it's just more time than I want to spend in total in Farming Simulator, and so I need to adjust something. And so it's like I've become more interested maybe in a different sim, where before Farming Simulator was the core of the channel. And I'm not saying I am, I'm just, being devil's advocate here on this one, saying that that's a possibility of what would be happening. And then I just have to say, you know what, that's the result. And we're back to, if we go fully back to reasoning, the fact that it's generational farming and this is part of the tension. I'm having more time in FSN and in Farming Simulator than I used to before generational farming, by agreeing to go ahead and try to do the generational farm. And as I've always said, like, when generational farming stops, like, then I get some relief. And again, there's challenges there that are coming to the fore kind of psychologically, because okay, why is this not turning off when I have it selected? So I don't understand. It's like, again, my controls aren't working. Alright, I have everything plugged in, don't I? Oh. I guess when I had to come back in, it didn't. I lost the hoses. Oh, good, great. So my mowers have been working. My mowers have been working the entire time when they haven't been connected, which is always fun when that happens within the game. But because it crashed and then it brought me in and they were on, like obviously it let me mow, so not a fault of mine. But yeah, I was going to try to either turn them off first and then fold them, and suddenly it's like, yeah, that's not working. So then I realized, oh, my hoses aren't connected, and then, well, actually my PTO wasn't connected either, but... So, a little bit of one of those quirks in, you know, kind of a bug, honestly, if we're gonna be honest. Because it shouldn't let you do that, like it should have immediately not let me turn anything on and so forth, but it did. In fact, I think it was all on when I came in, and I had to reset my GPS, but it didn't make me do anything with the other pieces. So if I had, because I was also trying to power them off, and that's where I was running into the challenge. I'm like, I can't even hit the B button to turn them off. Like, this doesn't make any sense. It's like, you know, now I'm operating the Terminator mode of my mowers, and they're like, no, I'm not letting you power me down. Oops. Okay. There we go. So we've got that done, and then now I can go grab my tedder. But yeah, going back to, you know, generational farming and this, you know, I knew that would be more time, and generational farming takes a lot of time. It takes more time than I spend on this farm. And so realistically, you know, that's certainly part of the pressure, is that. And it's definitely a big driver of the feeling of like, I'm not looking to add more time into my life in Farming Simulator and FSN. I'm spending more than I normally would over the long term, but I'm doing it knowingly in generational farming with an intention that, yeah, I want to experience this other way of playing games, and it's one of the reasons I didn't even remotely consider enhanced realism, because I'm like, I'm not looking for anything more involved, because more involved in Farming Simulator translates into more time. Look at where my lines are, because yeah, I'm gonna have to fix that. But this is, as I said, this is now where I have, you know, some ability, like I'm gonna be able to TED this, and then I'm gonna have to windrow it somewhere. But let's see if I move this up to where we're at, so that everything will align. That's where I want to be, and at this point, you know, again, it can move around and it can do all those things. But yeah, we should be good here. But now I'm not like cutting anything new, so if I throw things around a little bit more, I'm less concerned than I was with the mowing with tedding, because it covers things in a way that makes more sense. So yeah, so that's kind of the situation. You know, getting a little bit, certainly more into the psychology of where things are at, probably, than you've done on any other Farming Simulator channel ever. So, you know, and some of it is, if I was just a channel that did just single player, didn't have real-time servers that I was working on that create a time dynamic that just doesn't exist with someone, you know, like the other major channels that just do a bunch of single-player stuff, or just do like their own multiplayer stuff on their own servers that they fully control, and then those things don't move. So, I'm thinking of someone again, like a farm sim guy who, sure, they play on a multiplayer with ArgZ, but I believe, and I haven't watched those videos in a long time, so I'm going to caveat it. I may be saying something wrong. That is not how those are structured, but, I believe one multiplayer episode just kind of picks up where the other one left off, even though they may be 2 weeks apart. And so just like my single player VIP series, like they show up sometime on the weekend, in essence, 6 days or 8 days apart from each other, depending on the cycle on the given week. But when I jump in, even though it's a week later, like it's literally the same time I left the server, other than, yes, I may have slept or whatever, but I'm fully in control of the game time in that environment. So similarly, even though they're playing a multiplayer server, they're not leaving those servers running in real time like FSN does, where if I was to go away for 2 weeks, I'm going to miss a full year on the farm. And again, I'm going to owe taxes and I'm going to do whatever. Like it's just a different dynamic. So that's, why you're seeing that here on this channel in this particular situation, where you're not going to see it in a farm sim guy or a dagger win or whatever, because they're not doing this same type of thing. Because my thing is, I get busy, I want to do something else. These servers don't stop. They're real life servers, so there's always a consequence if I'm not here. It's an opportunity cost situation all the time. So that at the end is the dynamic that's being played out a little bit in my concern. And so it's one of those, like, I don't want to spend more time to be able to keep my farm alive with taxes. And I'm at the point, certainly, where, as I've said, the focus on this farm is not how much money I can make. So all I need is a positive cash flow. If I make $1,000 a season, I'm pretty sure, again, maybe I'll look at it and be like, well, this is driving me crazy. Well, then I have to reassess my feelings at that point. But like right now, I don't know that I'd care, like if I was always at $3.4 million. If I could just stay at that point and not be losing money, I'm okay, because I can enjoy the game, and I can do it perpetually, and it's not going to go away on me. That's the dynamic I'm playing with at this point. So, alright, let me pick this up, and now I was debating if I wanted to go down and do a headland, or this edge here like I did, and I think I need to, because otherwise I'm going too far off the field. But I was also hoping I could do it. Well, I still might be able to, because I know you can hit, because I just did it, 2 rows at once. I'm like, do I have to go up twice? And I don't. Well, unless I screw up here and don't move over enough. There we go. Alright. So yeah, I was just hoping I could cover it and then start going across, which I can, but I just needed to line up appropriately. But initially I was like, no, I'll just go back and forth, but no, that wouldn't work. So, and it's mainly because of where I am at down here. These trees are too close, so that I need to do it. But yeah, if I my concern at the root of it was I'm going to be forced at some point to not be able to play, because I can't. I get to the point where once I depleted my savings, I was out of money. Where once again, part of the debate from FSN leadership with me on this was, hey, if someone was, at the position that they could run their farm for 2 years, off their savings and not have a problem, like they'd consider themselves successful. I get what the point is, but once again, at some point, unless they're sure they're going to die before or 60 years, I'm sorry, is what they were implying, is like, hey, you've got enough money that you can run your farm for 60 years that people would consider their farm successful. Sort of. My argument, however, is if, like, at the end of those 60 years, I then had to, the farm was going to go bankrupt if I went another year, that would mean I'd been running a failing operation and simply fooling myself for 60 years. That was the problem and the disagreement I was having. I'm like, that isn't a success. That just means I was successful before, and now for 60 years I've not been successful. I've just been faking my success. I've become the Donald Trump of farming. I'm not actually making money. I'm living off money that I made before, and it looks like I'm making money, but I'm honestly losing money every year. So I'm trying to be more forthcoming than that and more aware, as opposed to pretending that because I have money in my bank account, I'm successful. That's the fallacy of most Americans, and why they stink at personal finance, is that's their thought. Well, I've got money, so I'm good. Well, you're only good if your plan is, at the end you're going to end up with zero, and then you die. So once again, certainly part of what I'm looking at, as everyone does at some point, is when do I step away from work and not work anymore? And, the FIRE movement and stuff like that, that's, kind of how that works, is you're betting on, I'm not going to run to zero, but yes, you're not making income at that point, but you're not making income. In this case, I'm making income, but the system's stacked in a way that I am losing, even though I'm working. And who wants to work in that environment, was kind of my point. So regardless, we keep circling back to the topic, because it's obviously a core. Alright, so the engine stopped because I need to repair my tractor. So when we get back to the other end of the field, so I think I had talked about how, there is a maintenance mod that got added in to FSN, that basically once we start hitting 50% on a piece of equipment with an engine, tractor would be one of those, it's going to start having mechanical failure because you're not maintaining it appropriately to avoid that. So, like, I can keep working on this, and maybe I can get through the rest of this field and it won't stop again. But and maybe that is what I'll do. I don't know what I'm going to do, because I have this implement. I can't pull over and do it without folding it all up, but it is what it is. Because I was like, maybe I get up to like the dairy barn, and maybe I will do that. Just kind of go back and forth, get to the dairy barn, and then I can just go straight across. I can maybe drop the implement on the field, come back and connect to it or whatever. But as opposed to wasting time driving up there from here. And if it gets ridiculous, and it stops a lot more often, I'll do that. But since at this point it's just kind of a dumb implement that I'm pulling, where I just need to lower it and power it, it's not incredibly inconvenient if it stops. It's different with planters and stuff like that, where there's more things going on. But anyway, that's what you saw at the end of the field, is that maintenance mod. Because if I go to my tractor, you can see I'm below, and I'm actually probably well below 50%. I'm probably getting close to 60%. And obviously the closer you get to that 100% need of maintenance, the more often it's going to break down to, if you push it all the way to the point that it's 100%, the way the mod works is you won't be able to start the vehicle at all. So I certainly need to avoid doing that, but I would imagine the amount of times it would be failing at that point would be substantial, and I would be sick of trying to drive it far longer than that. So that'll be my plan for now, is to get up there. Um, but trying to figure out, I mean, I have 2 hours. If I spend all 2 of those hours doing Farming Simulator before I have to step away from my gaming window. I cannot, almost with certainty, get all this work done by then. But the question's going to become, how far do I go or whatever. I mean, at this point, I've got stuff like the key point that was like the worst thing. I'm just going to leave it in because it's going to be too hard to find and edit, but it's just a lot of what I was thinking but not getting out of my mouth was the key point was the mowing. Just as I do in generational farming. Like, once you mow, now the grass is going to start regrowing, and it's just going to sit there and wait to be mowed again. I'm okay, and I could kind of take as long as I needed to some degree, although, again, there's that unknown of, is there really deterioration in FS22 that it'll eventually fall off the field. Now, the other side I've got obviously contending with me is I need grass at some point, and I could, do some of this as hay and leave some as grass. I mean, I've got options, but my intent was to do everything 100% of hay here. So I'm not really looking to do that. Like it's going to throw it out further where it doesn't really need to head that little piece of hay, but the windrower will take care of it. But no, what I was saying is I'm still running up against the clock or the deadline of next summer. I'd love to mow the field again and pull up grass. Obviously, if I still have hay that I need to deal with, that would create a problem. I mean, I could mow it again, but then, I've got grass mixed with hay. I go windrow it. It would probably be a disaster. Who knows what would happen, and I could ruin all kinds of things. So I don't want to do that. But my reality is, even if I devote 100% of my time to this, and I'm not sure that I want to do that, so I'm back into the position once again of I'm struggling to find enough time in my life to do the work that's there, which is what makes me deathly afraid of a dynamic that forces me to have more work. And so that's what we're going to be looking for to avoid that. But I'm not going to be able to get everything done without stepping away. But I should not really have a reason that I can't before next June or July. So this may poke around for a little bit. I'm going to go ahead and wrap this episode now. It's certainly way, way long enough. And I'm going to do as much as I can. But if I end up doing a bunch of other things on other days, we may revisit this in other episodes as I finish it up and just bring you along, which is kind of how the series in FSN works, is, I'm showing you what I'm doing. And if I'm spreading something out over a week of my life, that's likely going to turn into multiple episodes because it's other days, and that's how I keep the content full on the channel, is I'm showing you what's happening on these real-time servers. This one doesn't show up in real time, but it creates content that will show up at some point on a real-time type of recording schedule. So I'm recording in real time, obviously, but just not publishing and producing like I am in generational farming. So I have reached the point of babbling and creating a really ugly word salad that kind of looks a little bit like the hay that's spewing out of my tedder, which is usually a good time to say, you know what, I'm really, really done, and I'm not gonna really crossed that line into wasting your time by just babbling on longer in a completely incoherent way, far beyond what I was already doing. So, thanks for tagging along. Thanks for listening to my concerns. As always, if you've got comments about them, you want to make me feel better, you want to say, hey, Mature Simmer, you're missing this. You're going to be just fine because of this and this and this, and something I haven't thought of, I'd love to hear it. But with all that said, I will see you next time.